Cow's milk is very different from sheep's milk, which is very different from goat's milk. And in the same way, every single plant milk exhibits different properties, different nutritional profiles in terms of not just protein content, but what types of proteins are in those. Is it mostly albumin or a different type of protein that's in there? And they're going to react differently. So you find over time that some plant milks coagulate, respond to certain coagulants or to just simply to heat, and others don't coagulate, and you need to find another way to uh, provide it body. And so over time, you learn how do you work with these milks in order to express their best features in different dairy products, whether it's drinking milk or cheese or whatever. One of the milks that I'm most excited about is watermelon seed kernel milk, which is such a milky milk. I mean, it's just got creamy body to, and it's high in protein. And you can turn it into ice cream. You can turn it into cheese. There's so many potential uses for that. Um, and then the usage of legumes and grains also as a milk to utilize their inherent starch qualities
Hmm.
will they won't coagulate like watermelon seed milk, but the inherent starch will thicken it into something that's like a cheese, or will give it a creamy body to, let's say, ice cream without having to add additional oils. So for example, I have two ice cream bases in my upcoming cookbook. And neither one of them has any oil. So none of the ice creams have coconut oil or any other oil for creaminess because the inherent milks have enough um, creamy quality that you don't need to add additional oil. Just playing around. I mean, in exploring recipes for this book, I just made milks from everything that I could possibly get my hands on. Obviously, even to this day, I'm like, well, why didn't I use millet? I didn't try millet, or I didn't try this. So I'm still evolving my thinking. And there were things that I used that just didn't really work out as well, too. Well, I think just as I mentioned for ice cream, I found that, most plant-based ice cream recipes, and especially the commercial products, all have the addition of some kind of oil.
Hmm.
And I really, I'm not completely whole foods plant-based in the sense that I do use oil judiciously. I don't use tons of it,
Yeah.
but as I try to avoid it as much as I can. And I only use it when I find that I can't achieve, I don't know, a certain mouthfeel or something without the addition of it. So with ice cream, I was really, really just hell-bent on finding a way to make a creamy mouthfeel without adding some sort of oil to it, like all of the other commercial products and most other recipes. And so I found two ways of doing it. One of them was to use cooked rice that gets pureed with a plant milk.
Huh.
And that adds body and creaminess and prevents a lot of crystallization as well, too.
Oh.
Another thing that I'm really proud of is dairy. I don't know, as a nod to history, as a nod to the tradition of humankind, I really wanted to honor the cheese making tradition more than simply with fermenting the milks themselves. I really wanted to see if I could make a cheese that would start from making actual curds, where you start with a milk, not a paste of, pureed cashew nuts, but an actual milk
Mhm.
that you make from whatever ingredients, and then coagulate the proteins, separate the whey, and then press the curds into a cheese. I wanted to see, could I make cheese in that manner? And so I found that I could. And there's a whole bunch of recipes that really just start out with whole curds that get pressed. I have a blue cheese recipe where I'm growing the mold, but it really starts out as these nice large curds, like dairy cheese. And you would think that they're never going to melt into each other into one cohesive mass, but they do over time. And so it's techniques like that that are different and new, I believe, in this book. One day I had, the light bulb go off, and I thought, what I need to do is actually read about how actual feta is made.
Mm.
So I read several feta recipes, I watched some videos, and then I took that plant milk and I made it. I made feta exactly the way feta is made, and it worked.
That's what's
And
so,
what I was trying to do before was utilize plant-based ingredients like agar, which is in the recipe you have,
uh-huh.
and I found I didn't need to. All I need to do was make the curds, press them, and salt them, and then let it air dry. And the salt took out all the moisture, and I got
Wow.
the perfect degree of crumbliness. I think we're at an age where everyone is trying to make a buck by starting a business. It's like, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to sell these products, and then in 5 years, I'm going to sell to Unilever and I'm going to make, millions of dollars. And I'm going to protect my IP. And, I'm not going to share any of my knowledge with anybody else. And all the companies are pitted against each other. And meanwhile, they're all saying their impact business is trying to change the world.
Yeah.
If they're trying to change the world, why are we holding our knowledge just for ourselves rather than sharing it with the world? And so, I really believe in the democratization of knowledge, of sharing my IP, and I am really proud that my original cookbook helped other vegan cheesemakers get started and um, help advance the movement. And I'm hoping this book, as I say, I hope this is the book that launches, 10,000 vegan cheesemakers. I became a vegetarian when I was 12, and then I transitioned to veganism in my 20s and the mid 80s. So there are foods that I've never had in my life. For example, halloumi was a cheese I'd never had because nobody, ate halloumi back in the 1980s before I went vegan. And so I had to ask people, what is it like? And I had to read up on it. And then I tried to come up with a halloumi-like recipe for my upcoming book called malumi because it's made out of mung dal. Um, but right now I'm being asked to veganize some other cheeses from a region of Asia, from Bhutan. And so I've had to ask a lot of questions like, okay, what are the properties? What are the ingredients that are available there in your country? What's it like, et cetera. And so, you know, there's still, when you have limited knowledge of something because you just never had that experience, yeah, I think it makes it harder. A lot of the recipes that I veganized from Julia Child, I'd never had before. I'd never had boeuf bourguignon
Yeah.
or cassoulet because I've been, vegetarian since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
But I would just read it and think about how would I could sort of sense what that sauce would taste like. And then I was able to replicate it using traditional Japanese ingredients like soy sauce and miso and red wine. And now today everybody uses those ingredients. But when I first published a cookbook with that back in the 1990s, those were not ingredients that were typically used in Western cuisine. You know, I've definitely that thought has danced around my mind multiple times. Um, I think my business mind says, okay, I mean, my creative mind says, yeah, I want to do something like that. And then my business head says, okay, but where?
Yeah.
And, especially with the economy going where it may be going right now, I don't know that it's
Yeah.
a good time to do anything.
True.
Um, but I live in an area where that just doesn't support veganism, even though I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's not a single vegan restaurant in the county I live in.
Wow.
And vegan restaurants all over the Bay Area have been closing since the pandemic. So,
Yeah.
I want to do something that would bring people together,
Yeah.
sort of something communal, where maybe the tables would be all communal. Like people, you go and there's one set time. I want to create community. That's my next big goal. How do I create community around food? And so if I were to have a restaurant, it wouldn't be like two tops and four tops, but they'd be long tables and everyone has to, the food would be the reason for people to come together and get to know each other. So I played around with that idea, but so far, the closest thing I've gotten to it is that I do a lot of garden to table dinners here at Rancho Compasión. We have a beautiful vineyard setting, and so I'll be doing a Mother's Day brunch there. I did a garden to table dinner there a couple of weeks ago. And I really love crafting not just meals, but experiences for people that bring them together. Yeah, absolutely. I would say obviously the milks, the ice creams, and the yogurts, and then just some of the simple cheeses. There are, for example, there's a watermelon seed and cashew milk ricotta. That's amazing. There's no fermentation involved. There's a mozzarella that's also really easy to make. So there are dishes that are made in one day rather than 2 or 3 days or 2 months or whatever. I take real food seriously. I don't believe in concocting instant replicas of foods by using cheap ingredients like oil and starch and gums and things like that. That's how most food is created today. The food that you buy, all the packaged processed foods. And I don't care what, the vegan industry, the plant-based industry says about their industry not being processed. Meat is really evil, and meat is evil. And our foods aren't as bad. But the fact of the matter is, most plant-based foods, the meats, even the milks, they're highly processed. They have all kinds of ingredients that you would not find in a kitchen. They don't have the nutritive value that you want in food. And it's really hard for the industry to admit it because the goal is to make money.
Yeah.
And so, I really feel it's important for people to reclaim their kitchens so that we can preserve, what's left of um, healthy food and humanity. Well, dairy really is the same thing as meat because dairy cows are actually suffer more than beef cows. Beef cows are often the mothers stay with their babies or the babies stay with their mothers. They get to at least grass feed for the most part before they go off to the feedlot for slaughter. But dairy cows from the get-go, if it's a male, they're taken away and either sold as cheap meat or as veal calves immediately. Um, but all calves are separated from their moms from the get-go. And all dairy cows, unbeknownst to most people, by the time they're 4 to 6 years old, when their milk production goes down, get sold off to um, the meat industry. They get turned into a hamburger. And so milk is meat. It's the same thing.
Mm.
We have the majority of cows in this country are dairy cows. They take up about 50% of all land mass. It is a completely unsustainable um, industry, not only for the animals, but for the environment. So we really do need to reduce the consumption of dairy and meat. Um, and luckily, there are so many ways of doing that right now. There's this bell curve that shows who the early adopters are versus the laggards. And the early adopters are not interested in eating beyond and impossible. They're interested in eating whole foods
Mm.
because they want to give up meat largely for health reasons. And so they don't want to replace it with highly processed foods. And we're turning off those early adopters, which is why I believe the industry is not doing well and, and why veganism may not be growing. And I think what we need to do is actually create a more inclusive, community first culture as a form of activism, to invite people into the fold by preparing delicious, colorful, vibrant looking dishes, showing how we're helping to restore soil health, um, restore nature, biodiversity, et cetera, all the catchphrases that the early adopters are interested in.
Hmm.
And we can do that in an inclusive, warm, inviting manner without judging, without yelling, without, you know, creating this idea that, you all you have to do is go out and buy products. I think what we need to do is become the Italy of activism. Like we have to become the place that everybody wants to go because it's just a beautiful lifestyle, because the food is so delicious, because it's crave-worthy.
Hmm.
And, when people can see, oh my God, I can eat like that, then that's when you make an impact.